Hey guys, and welcome back to your English 2 classroom. By now, you've read By Any Other Name, a memoir by Santha Rama Rao, and you have a test over this selection on Monday. You have read it and answered all of the questions. I'll be grading this soon. There are 6 questions embedded along with some annotations that you had to do. So make sure that you have that done. Um, Today is the end of the 3-week grading period. I'll be getting grades in and you'll be getting progress reports next week. So today, if you go to Google Classroom or to the agenda, you'll see that you have 3 assignments to do, 3 lessons, 1.14, 1.15, and 1.16. Those are just what I call them to keep track of them in my grade book. But in Ed, they're called Check Your Understanding, Analyze the Text, and Respond Vocabulary. These are all in response to By Any Other Name. So let's go back to the story, and I'm going to click through to the Check Your Understanding questions. So you have 3 of these. What conflict do Santha and Pramila experience when they meet the headmistress? I skipped one, sorry. 2, which of these does Santha learn at school? And 3, why does Pramila take Santha out of the school in the middle of the day? Okay, those are all multiple choice, and you can check those and see how you did. Now, moving on to analyzing the text, I wanted to be very clear again about this. We have gone over these in the past, and there's that chart in front of the room for those of you that are in class that shows you how to answer essay questions. But briefly, they need to be at least 3 sentences long. They need to start with a capital. Your sentences need to start with a capital and end with a period, have correct grammar, spelling, and punctuation. You need to answer the question by turning it into a statement, and then support your response with evidence from the text, and then explain how that text evidence does support your answer. So we're going to go through the 5 questions, and I'll kind of give you some clues maybe about how to answer them. What do the headmistress's gestures and expressions tell you about her motivation for changing the girls' names? Support your responses with evidence from the text. So how do her body language and her gestures and what she does and says, how do those things tell you what her motivation is? What do you think her motivation is for changing the girls' names? Okay? And then support your responses with evidence from the text. So to start answering this question, you're going to turn the statement into a question by saying, we learn through her gestures and expressions that the head mistress's motivation is, you can leave out for changing the girls' names. And then you're going to answer that question and then say, it says in paragraph whatever, and include that quote, and then explain how that tells us what her motivation is. Okay? That's question number 1. Question number 2, name 2 ways in which, and notice that there's a heading in each one of these questions. So this is interpret. They want you to interpret something. This one is specifically testing your ability to cite evidence from the text. So name 2 ways in which the Indian girls who have been at the school for a while imitate the English girls. How do these examples reflect the historical context of the memoir? Support your responses with evidence of the text. So 2 examples from the story of ways in which the Indian girls imitate something about the culture or the way they dress or the way they do things, where they're imitating the English girls. How do these examples reflect the historical context? Well, remember the historical context, we talked about that before we read the story, is that this is during a time of colonialism, when India was ruled over by Great Britain for almost 100 years, and all of the government and the police the police force and just the local infrastructure was controlled by the British. And there were a lot of British children there because there were a lot of British people there. And then these Indian girls, some of the Indian children go to the British schools, and the customs and the culture is very different. So how does the way that these girls, the Indian girls, imitate the British girls? How does that reflect this historical context of one culture being sort of um, supplanted with another culture in a way? Um, they weren't always the Indians weren't always encouraged to express their own culture, but more to assimilate to the British culture. So how is all that reflected in some of the things that the girls do? Support your answers with evidence from the text. So you're going to need to specifically cite those instances where it talks about the Indian girls um, imitating the British girls. Okay, enough about that one. Let's move on. Infer. You're going to make an inference here. Based on the last paragraph, explain how Santha views the conflict with the headmistress. How does this view fit the author's purpose for writing this memoir? Support your response with evidence from the text. So just look at the last paragraph and what is Santha's point of view of the conflict with the headmistress? Okay? How does she view it? How does she feel about it? What does she think it's about? And how does this fit the author's purpose? So you have to think about, why do you think the author, who experienced this herself, why do you think she wrote about this? Why do you think she wanted us to know about it? What do you think she wanted us to learn from it? So what was the author's purpose? Okay, it's not a funny story. It's not a funny story that she wanted to entertain us with. So what was her purpose in writing this story? And how does that last paragraph, how does Santha's view of what was going on reflect the purpose? And I'm going to give you a hint about this. Let's just go back to the last paragraph. Why don't we? Of course, they were both wrong. I understood it perfectly, and I remember it all very clearly, but I put it happily away because it had all happened to a girl called Cynthia, and I never was really particularly interested in her. Okay, so I want you to think about that. Cynthia is the name that the headmistress gave her because she didn't want to or couldn't pronounce Santha or didn't want to learn. She wanted to give her an English sounding name. So what does that have to do with the author's purpose? What does she want us to learn from it? All right, let's go back to our questions. Remember, these have to be at least 3 sentences. You couldn't answer that question fully without it being at least 3 sentences. You're going to get better at these. Just keep working at it. But I'm going to be looking for an honest attempt at complete sentences, an honest attempt at trying to analyze, infer, cite evidence, and so on. Number 4, many ideas are passed from generation to generation. How might Pramila's teacher have passed on a prejudice to her students? What values did Santha's mother pass on to her children? Based on your responses, what do you think in the story is the story's theme or insight about life? The theme is an insight about life, kind of a universal idea that the author is trying to teach us or tell us about. And sometimes they come right out and say it, and sometimes we just have to figure it out ourselves. But it's asking you 2 questions, actually 3 questions. How might Pramila's teacher, the British teacher, how might she either intentionally or inadvertently passed on a prejudice to her students? And we're talking here probably about a prejudice against Indians or Indian culture. And in contrast to that, what values did Santha's mother pass on to her children? What did they learn from her? And notice it doesn't ask for text evidence here. This would be a really long answer if you use text evidence, so I'm okay with you not using text evidence. You can just explain it. And then based on your responses to these questions, how might Pramila's teacher have passed on prejudice, and what values did Santha's mother pass on to her children? What do you think is the story's theme or insight about life? What does this story teach you? What did you get from it? And then 5, notice and note. What does the text suggest about how the experience of childhood is remembered? Cite memory moments from the text in your answer. Remember, a memory moment, the whole thing almost is a memory moment because it's a memoir, but within that memory moment, and one of your prior questions said, what thing happened in the past but happened earlier in the past. So it's almost like a memory within a memory. So the whole thing is a memory moment, but where are the memory moments within the memoir? Okay. So when she goes back to another time, a past time before she's at the school. So cite memory moments from your text to support this answer to this question. What does the text suggest about how the experience of childhood is remembered? Okay. How do we remember our childhood based on her experiences? Do we remember every single moment of it, in other words? I'm trying to give you a hint here. Or do we kind of remember bits and pieces or important things? Just what is it about her childhood that she remembered the most, and why do you think she remembered those? All right, those are your analyze the text questions. So you had your check your understanding, you had your analyze the text, 5 of those. But if you scroll down, I do want you to do this part this time, which is research. How do you think Santha would answer Juliet's question, what's in a name? Going back to the reference to Romeo and Juliet that we talked about at the beginning. How important do you think a person's name is to her or her sense of identity? And we talked about this already, kind of got you thinking about it. Find out more about a situation in which someone's name has been changed either by their choice or someone else's. So you're just going to go to Google and you're going to Google something like people who had their names changed for cultural reasons, or people who changed their name for professional reasons. The example that I can come up with right now is Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali, the famous boxer, started out in life as Cassius Clay, but later on in life, based on his cultural beliefs, his religious beliefs, and his societal things that were happening in society at that time, he became a Muslim, and he changed his name to a Muslim name. And he had a very specific reason why he did that. So I don't even care if you use him as an example. But think of someone or find out about someone who either had their name changed, like the person in the story, or who changed their name on purpose. And think about why they did that. So then you answer these questions. Whose name was changed? So give their original name. Whose idea was it to change the name? It was either their idea or someone else's. Why was the name changed? So what was the purpose of doing that? And how did the name change affect the person or others around them? Okay, so I do want you to do this part. You do not have to do the connect. You do not have to write a poem or discuss with a small group. Okay, so again on this page, which is respond, analyze the text, answer the 5 questions, and then do this little bit of research. Okay, moving on to the next part, which is the 3rd lesson, which is respond, critical vocabulary. Remember that back in your assignments list, you need to open each, even though we can scroll through, you need to go back and open each assignment individually so that you can mark each assignment as done when you're finished. So we're back to our 4 words that we learned earlier and you wrote definitions for: insular, precarious, sedately, and tepid. And you're going to practice. You've got 4 questions about the critical vocabulary. And then down here, you've got 4 different things to do as well. Use context clues and a dictionary if needed to write the meaning of the bold-faced term in your own words. So what you can do, Tobias is in a rare good mood, so please don't upset the status quo. You can either try to figure out what it means. I would look it up in the dictionary, but don't just copy the dictionary definition. I want you to put the definition in your own words. So what does status quo mean to you in your own words? Okay? And so once you finish those 4 and these 4, you're finished with this assignment and you can mark it as done. So briefly, just to make sure you've got everything down, you should have read the story and answered all the questions that are embedded within the story and did all the annotating. 3 questions in the check your understanding, and that's all. Analyze the text, do all 5, and this is really the most important thing, and it's going to take you the longest to answer these analyzing the text questions thoroughly. At least 3 sentences, use text evidence when it's asked for, correct grammar, spelling, and punctuation, and a good, honest effort to really think about and analyze the story. Then the research bit, finding out about a person who has changed their name or had their name changed for them. And then 4 questions at the beginning of this, multiple choice, and then 4 questions at the bottom. So 8 questions total on this assignment. And that's what you have to do today. Email me if you have any questions, and I'll get right back to you. And remember that you do have a test over this on Monday. Just to remind you, and I'll remind you again, I won't be here on Monday. I'll have a sub, but I will be on campus working on something else. So on Monday, if you want to email me, you can, but you'll be taking the test in class and doing your response log. So that second box on your response log in response to this story by any other name. All right, that's going to wrap it up today. I will talk to you soon.